Welcome back. Bloomberg's Al Hunt sits down today for an exclusive interview with President Obama's top economic advisor, Larry Summers. The former Treasury Secretary under President Clinton is now director of the administration's National Economic Council. He's not only considered the most powerful economic advisor in the Obama White House, but a possible successor to Ben Bernanke as the next Fed chairman. Joining us now to discuss Summers' tenure so far is Joseph Mason. He's a professor of finance at Louisiana State University and a senior fellow at the Wharton School. The professor joining us this morning from New Orleans. Professor, welcome to Bloomberg News.
Good morning.
Sir, talk to me about Larry Summers. You have heard the criticism that he is too close to Wall Street. Is that criticism fair?
Well, I think anyone who's worthwhile is close to Wall Street. That being said, I think Larry kind of moved away from his former stint at the Treasury into the kind of typical post-public service consulting arrangements and has gotten, in fact, too close to those arrangements, perhaps to come back now into public service. His stint with D.E. Shaw, his recent brushes with Citi, even his $2.7 million last year in speaking fees from TARP recipients, I think has drawn him too close to really be approved for a nomination by the Senate.
Sir, you have also heard the talk that Mr. Summers really would like to be Federal Reserve Board chairman, and of course that pits a clash between Mr. Summers and the current Fed chairman, Ben Bernanke. Assess Mr. Summers' chances and give us a scorecard or a grade, if you will, on how Mr. Bernanke's been doing.
Well, the problem with Bernanke right now is every economist wants to see him succeed. He's a great monetary theorist. He's done incredible work in the field, no doubt about that. His problem has been his political acumen. Congress, of course, wants to control the Federal Reserve. That's where the money is, just like Willie Sutton said hundreds of years ago. Banks are where the money is. But Bernanke has, I think, caved into some of the pressure from Congress and raised this specter of central bank independence, or the lack thereof, that could really hurt the dollar going forward. Now, of course, Summers is much more politically adept. That's where his advantage lies. His disadvantage, however, is that he's not a monetary economist. He's more of a macro fiscal policy economist combined with labor, much like his mentor, Marty Feldstein. That's the lineage he comes from in economics. So it's not clear that he's really a fit for the job.
Professor Mason, if Mr. Summers should become Federal Reserve Board chairman, could that signal that the Fed and Treasury might be working a little bit too close together, and would that pose a problem?
Well, that's the fear, and in fact, we've been here before. At the Fed's founding during World War I, later on during the Great Depression, through World War II, the Fed and the Treasury worked together. The Fed worked to keep interest rates low so that the Treasury could borrow at low rates to fund fiscal expenditures that backed war efforts and recovery from the Great Depression. This, however, became a problem because the currency was so actively managed that nobody in the world really believed that the Fed could keep up the ruse. So the Fed split formally with the Treasury in the 1950s in a famous accord where it said, we're going our own way. We're going to seek to stabilize the dollar, notwithstanding what happens with interest rates, and Treasury, you're on your own. So in fact, we're taking some steps backward in history here if the Fed and the Treasury work closer together, and not necessarily in a good way.
Sir, if I might ask you about the President's economic policies. The administration, Mr. Summers, Secretary Geithner at Treasury, all saying that the stimulus has in fact been working, that we are headed in the right direction. Is that overly optimistic, or are there signs that things are heading in the right direction?
Well, it's still too soon to tell. It appears that we have some modicum of stability in financial markets and also in the economy in general. Now, that being said, we have a lot of lagging economic effects. Unemployment is a lagging economic effect, so we can expect to see higher unemployment for some years to come, even if we have already hit the trough. In terms of financial policy, it's not clear we're out of the woods yet. The FDIC has been working closely with Citi and B of A to promote their stability without closing them down, which is the right thing to do, I think, for the FDIC. But we still see accelerating bank failures. I think this is going to be a record year for bank failures, and we are far from over.
Professor Joseph Mason, he teaches finance at Louisiana State University, joining us this morning. Professor, thanks.